Does Milky's have what it takes to become the ultimate fighting champion? What secrets does the Upper City hold? And will Mum ever stop being such a
Yes, it's all fake, and of course not. We've got a lot to do today, so let's get into it. G'day friends, my name is Milky's, and in this video we have 200 days to uncover the secrets of the Upper City and rescue our father. We pick things back up at the start of Chapter 2, where I had just beaten the league champion Aesop. After being presented with Silver's Cup, I'm approached by this guy. He insists that I call him Uncle Barry, and he also does a stupid dance after every sentence. He invites me to his office, where I sign my life away to officially become a professional fighter. We're sorted into the bottom of the 2nd division. This time, however, we fight for money. If I want to change my rankings and challenge a high-ranked fighter, it's going to cost me. On the flip side, I can make a ton of money by beating up on lower-ranked fighters. Clippy gives me a tour of the leaderboards, and then I challenge Goro Majima. After all that business, I get a call from the police chief. He has some important news for me at the station. I head down and he tells me that I can now become an officer and enforce the rule of the fist. I'm given a snazzy uniform, and then we get a tour of our sweet new workspace, which includes a gym, our own desk, and a few corrupt buddies that we can hang out with. Our job consists of walking the beat, filing paperwork, and chilling with the boys. But if I don't fill my quota consistently, I'll get sacked. I've got a few days to kill before my first shift, so I decided to pay the doc a visit and buy a few augmentations. I bought a few quality of life upgrades, like the workout booster and discounted bus tickets. My favorite, however, is Lolkek. This sends me a shitty joke every day for the low price of a $1 subscription. Speaking of, if you see a police officer urinating on someone, don't worry. It's just the new rule of the piss. Yeah, some of them aren't that funny. We also take RoboMick down to his old gym and get him up to speed on the events of the past 20 years. And after we break the news of his death to him, he becomes convinced that he's a ghost. More importantly, Mick gives us a noble quest to pick up where he left off and take on students of our own. Wanting to make up for the sins of my father, I agree. Mick disappears to find us some students, and I head out to pay the bills. I'm in the middle of slime punching when I get a phone call from the sergeant. It's my first day of police duty, and as it turns out, it's not all donuts and shootouts. In fact, I missed my quota on my very first day and got a warning from the boss. On the bright side, as a perk of the job, I'm given a sweet apartment with a robo-mum, which means that I can finally move out of home. Unfortunately, if I underperform at work consistently, I'll get evicted. Not wanting to lose my new digs, I consult Old Reliable, where I learned that the best way to be a police officer is to never actually leave the station. Forget walking the beat and solving crime. No, we're sitting at the desk and filing paperwork. I had 3 days before my first professional fight, so I decided to check out the new police gym. This place was awesome. I raised my agility by training crowd control, and then I tried out the handcuffing simulator. I finished off my workout on the state-of-the-art donut dumbbells. There were still 12 hours to kill, so I juiced myself full of slime and then attended my fight. We kicked each other in the face for a while, but I simply didn't have the stamina to keep up, and Goro emerged victorious with literally 1 health remaining. I only had 24 hours to sign up for my next fight, but I lacked the money to challenge another opponent. Luckily for me, Mick had rounded up a few sorry excuses for students. And now I had another money-making opportunity. I spent some time chilling in my fancy apartment before it was time to show the sergeant that I had what it took to be the best cop ever. And after doing the bare minimum to not get fired, I cashed up by bending metal and slime punching so that I could afford a rematch against Goro Majima. In the meantime, I had students to train. And after another inspiring training session, it was time for duty. What did the hologram say when the piano fell on it? I don't give a damn. I'm a hologram. Fuck yeah, I'm the best. I spent a few hours leveling my agility and stamina in anticipation of my rematch, and I also unlocked Pendulum, which gives me the chance to counterattack after a successful dodge. Alright, it's showtime. I took a special slime juice to increase my stamina recovery between rounds, and I was ready. Fuck. I was defeated again. My lack of energy was my downfall. Then, another catastrophe struck. The power went out. In this power outage, I lost about an hour of footage. We pick up here, and I don't know, let's just call it day 130-ish. Anyway, due to the incompetence of this very rude courier, we are tasked with delivering some illegal augmentations to the guards on the bridge. I get into a scuffle, but we complete the mission. Foreshadowing for future videos perhaps? After that, it was back to work bending and punching before I went to Mix to inspire my students. I was so busy between my many jobs that I completely forgot that it was sign-in time. I missed the cutoff and took a GPP penalty as a result. On the bright side, I discovered the power of cigarettes. Sweet sticks. Quote unquote, eating these will increase my happiness, which makes me work more efficiently. See? now I'm doing a little better than barely scraping by as a cop. In fact, the sergeant congratulated me on my mediocre performance and sent me on my first call out, which was a disturbance at Silvers. After an embarrassing loss and a quick workout, I came back stronger and ready to keep the peace. Once that business was taken care of, I watched another movie with Henry and picked up a few perks to increase my movement speed and health pool. I worked my training job the next day, where I had the opportunity to recruit more students provided that I could source more workout equipment from the junkyard. I dropped half my cash on a wind chun, and then Mick gave me another inspirational speech about the importance of helping others. He then sent me on a mission to save this guy, who somehow managed to get on the bad side of literally every single gang in the city. I arrived just in the nick of time, and after beating up this scary Russian and terrible Todd, we recruit the new guy into the punch club. My fantastic coaching skills were starting to pay off, literally, and now I can afford my next matchup. I spent most of my time before fight day working out to avoid another embarrassing performance, which finally paid off. Mick gives me another tape to watch and we get a phone call from Mum. It seems she's starting to really abuse those sleeping pills that we keep buying her to the point that they are basically ineffective. So I stop by Apu's after work and he gives me earplugs, which seems to be a far less extreme solution than the tranquilizers that I have been feeding her for the past few months. Mum stops bothering me and I get back to my sad, horrible life of working 4 jobs 24 hours a day without rest. At this point, I had the police and coaching jobs down to an exact science. Before long, the sergeant freed me from this crushing routine by sending me on another call out to my own apartment. This was an emergency, so I headed straight there. After an epic double feature at Henry's house, of course. I arrive home to a broken window and a cringe monologue from a villain with an unclear motivation. He beat me down, so my apartment belongs to him for the foreseeable future. Now that I'm homeless, I'm hanging out at Mick's. He lets me know that I'm ready for a new student. I buy the pull-up bar before intercepting my future student and his boys, who are attempting to rob Apu. After a beatdown and a heartfelt conversation, Jim Boy here agrees to join the punch club. I spend the next few days with my nose to the grindstone, solving crimes and training my students to become stronger. Eventually, duty calls and I'm sent to the nightclub on police business. Apparently, someone has been letting their balls out on the D floor, and it's my job to put a stop to it. Mel Gibson from Braveheart beats me by the skin of his balls, and he's free to dangle for another day. I head home for a nap, and oh yeah, I beat up the yellow monologuing guy at some point, but I don't know where the footage went. It's gone, so just use your imaginations. Anyway, I'm literally just about to climb into bed when Mum calls. Apparently, her earplugs aren't good enough either, but I've had a long day and quite enough of her shit, so I hang up. After sulking in my apartment for the night, I get back to training and then eventually back to the nightclub to finish some business.
Shit. Note to self, cut that.
And then I head back to the nightclub to finish some business.
You know what, never mind.
Afterwards, it's fight night against a familiar face, but he gets his revenge. Now, I'm no genius, but it's blatantly obvious that I'm stagnating. I'm not winning any fights, and there's only one way to fix it, and that's with a sports training montage. As you would have noticed, I've been climbing the ranks in the 2nd division. As a result of my success, Uncle Barry confides in me his suspicion of a cheater in the Pro League, and he asks for my help in finding out who that person may be. I know just the man for the job, so I meet with Bobo Jr. and ask for his help in building a cheater detecting device of sorts. He agrees under the condition that I find out what his dad, Big Bobo, is up to, as Junior has noticed some strange behavior and he's concerned about potential criminal dealings. I followed Big Bobo and what I discovered was much worse. He's watching anime. I walk in on what I assume is a JoJo reference and report my findings back to Junior. He holds up his end of the bargain and gives me the device in a ridiculously large box. It's just my luck that we run into this cutie, who happens to be carrying an identical box. We accidentally swap possessions before she's thrown into a car by these blokes, who are wearing cat helmets for no apparent reason. I take my concerns to Barry, and he tells me those silly looking dudes are in fact the feds, and if they've taken her, she's likely never to be heard from ever again. As I go to leave, I receive a transmission of some kind on my watch. Not much is revealed, but whoever is on the other side is definitely related to the plot. After all of that, everything returns to normal, and I had less than 24 hours to sign in for my next fight. I managed to scrounge enough money together to challenge the Division 2 leader, Adam from Real Steel. With 2 days to prepare, I diligently served my city before working out furiously for some last minute gains. Chappie specialized in the Berserker fighting style, which made him a hard-hitting brawler who could reflect damage back to me whenever I attacked him. My strategy for this fight was to place an emphasis on dodging his attacks and draining his movement points. This, however, was not a winning strategy. It would cost me $700 for another shot at the title, so for the next several days, I focused on my work schedule. I also picked up a couple of extra skills that would allow me to return more punishing attacks after a successful dodge. My strategy going in the rematch was still to emphasize dodging, but this time I would return with fewer attacks that hit harder. Success. Chappie went down in round 2 and we enter chapter 3. I'm now in the first division, which meant that the only thing standing between me and the upper city was 11 of the biggest, baddest fighters around. I had a few days before sign-in, which I spent doing all of my usual chores, until I got a phone call from Henry. Let's lighten the mood a little. How about a joke? What happens when... This was not the time for jokes. We caught the next bus to the hospital, where we saw our dear mum lying there in a coma. At least she's finally getting some sleep, am I right? All jokes aside, the doc explains that mum needs critical surgery to save her life, but he won't do it until we can pay an upfront bill of $42,675 with interest. God bless America. I went straight to Mick for advice, and he told me that he can start crowdfunding the money for me. But for that to work, I'll need to gain the respect of the public by becoming a sensei. However, to do this, I would need to quit my job as a police officer. Likewise, when I talked to the sergeant, he told me that the police health insurance plan would cover it, provided of course that I turn my back on Mick and the Punch Club. To make up for all of my horrible moral choices in the first game, I decided to stick with Mick and become a sensei. At our next training session, Mick rallies the boys around my cause, and just like that, the surgery is paid for and I became a sensei, which was maybe a little anticlimactic. And after objectifying my mother right in front of me, the doc says that the surgery was a success and she'll be okay. The cause of Mum's near-death experience was a malfunctioning GPP chip in her skull, which was about the size of an apple. I keep the chip as a grotesque souvenir and take Mum back to her throne. After 20 years, she finally tells me that she's proud of me and that she believes that our father is not only alive, but needs our help. After that roller coaster of emotions, I head down to Mick's for some late night exercise, but I'm interrupted from a phone call from the man himself. Now that I'm a sensei, he tells me that the Punch Club is my only job from here on out, and that I will need even more equipment for all of the new students that I'm about to gain. Okay, so chapter 3 is a whole lot of grinding without much story in between. The main focus of chapter 3 is reaching the top of the leaderboard. I'll stop at the good parts for you, but for your benefit, I'm skipping a lot of the boring stuff like this. Anyway, I continue my routine for a few days in preparation for my fight against Nick Stoneballs, who is famous for having a great personality. I turn his Stoneballs to dust, and then acquire another student for my gym. In between training and gaining new recruits, I'm repeatedly choosing to fight Nick Stoneballs, as it's an easy way to make $500 every 3 days. By using this method, I had soon purchased a full gym worth of equipment and I had a full roster of students. I had also picked up a heap of useful combat skills along the way. This meant that the only thing left to do was become champion and enter the upper city. I beat up some dude to claim 9th, Mad for 7th, Undercover Robot for 5th, then Mr. Blue. It's time for the championship fight. Jax is a hard-hitting brawler, and I take him down by draining his energy to prevent him from attacking. After taking the championship, Uncle Barry tells us that our Upper City pass will arrive in the next few days. In the meantime, he sends me to the shop for some donuts. Donuts being the password to alert the sleeper agent who has been deep undercover as a janitor this entire time. It turns out that he used to be a cop and is now in possession of Kay's GPP chip, which apparently holds all of the answers that we are looking for, provided of course that we can crack it. Knowing just the guy, I take it to our resident hacker man, who tells me to talk to Carla, who tells me to talk to the Russians, who tells me to go back to Bobo. After a fistfight and a whole heap of running around, we obtain a device that allows us to see the memories of others by scanning their chip. This part gets a little long-winded, but basically we discover that all of the powerful characters that we have encountered on our journey, like Bobo, the Yakuza, and the Russians, were installed by this guy, who I'm gonna call Lion Man. Officer K and the sergeant were investigating these happenings when things took a bad turn. A shootout happened, the sarge got vaporized, and K was framed for murder. We take this information to Uncle Barry, But then, in a shocking turn of events, Barry is revealed to be Kay, who was walking around in some kind of mech suit. Kay tells me that the feds know that we know the truth and they're on their way to arrest us. I rush home to escape with Mum, but she's gone, and I end up held at gunpoint by the Lion Man. I was staring down the barrel of death when suddenly, holy shit, it's Carla. Big reveal, she's a sentient car. Carla whisks me out of the city, and I'm taken to the hideout of the Resistance. Along the way, we learn of the horrible fate that befell humanity in the past. This was caused by someone called the Evil Genius, or as we know him, Fluffy. At the Resistance camp, we are reunited with our uncle from the first game, and we learn the horrible truth. There is no upper city, and there never has been. It's all a simulation, some kind of poorly made metaverse, and we are given the chance to hack in and destroy it. With the help of this cybernetic dolphin named Frank, we have the chance to shut down the upper city and defeat the Evil Genius, once and for all. I strap into the chair, and Operation Catharsis is a go. Get it? The plan is to find the conveniently placed virtual shutoff switch. Pulling it will destroy the simulation. Once we're in, Fluffy shit talks us before sending his goons out to stop me. My first foe is the delivery boy, who threatens to stick things up my bum. Unlucky for him, now that we're in the simulation, I have access to every fighting style and ability in the game. But because I'm afraid of change, I kept everything mostly the same, a decision which I would soon regret. With a few minor adjustments, I beat the delivery boy the second time around, and thus, my bum was safe. My next foe is Silver's alter ego, Gold, who has betrayed me for a G Fuel sponsorship. He goes down easily, and now there's only one more henchman standing in the way. Lil Bobo, my oldest friend. Sadly for Lil Bobo, he failed to stop me. Finally, I'm face to face with Fluffy, the Evil Genius, who has one more trick up his sleeve. A big fucking robot. This thing is proficient in every fighting style. The gimmick of this fight was that every time I beat him, he assumes the next form. For me, this fight took like 40 minutes, and this is where I realized that in my 35 hours of playtime, I had learned nothing about the mechanics of this game. Through trial and error, I had created a foolproof system. His first form was vulnerable to quick kicks and dodges, so I kicked him in the balls for 10 consecutive rounds until he went down. His second form was a brawler, with no defensive moves whatsoever. For this, I used the Tiger Paw. This move deals double damage if the attack lands undefended, which it would every time. Finally, the big giant robot used a fighting style reliant on dodges. I countered this with attacks that increased the stamina cost every time he dodged, and after wearing him down in a battle of attrition, it was over. The Evil Genius flees through a door, which leads to what I'm going to call the Multiverse Control Room. This is where the Evil Genius reveals to us that I have reached this point tens of millions of times, and yet I was still unable to defeat him because of what comes next. Walking slightly to the right reveals our father, imprisoned by the Evil Genius. We scold Fluffy thoroughly before we are left with a choice. Do we disable the upper city and kill our father, or do we allow the Evil Genius to maintain total control, forcing Dad to be imprisoned for an eternity? We go with the objectively correct decision and turn off the simulation. But before we can see the results of our actions, that's right, it looks like Punch Club 3 is all but confirmed. So, if you enjoyed my series on the first two games as much as I did, let TinyBuild know. And be sure to like the video. Maybe we can get an early look at the next game. Anyway, that's it for 2023. So everyone enjoy spending time with your families over the holidays, and I'll see you next year.